Welcome everyone, 5/17/2022. It's hot outside. Hey, we're going to talk about chapter 3 of Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. I'm going to jump to the end and talk about the summary action steps, and we'll see if we can wrap it in a bow as we go back to the beginning. Summary action steps on page 90. Identify your best 3 habits. Those that support your most important goal. Then number 2, identify your 3 bad habits that take you off course from your most important goal. 3, identify 3 new habits you need to develop to put yourself on track toward your most important goal. Number 4, identify your core motivation. Discover what gets you fired up and keeps you fired up to achieve big results. 5, find your why power. Design your concise, compelling, all-inspiring goals. And then he gives us a pitch for living, for using his journal about big goals and living your best year ever. Anybody else that one about identify 3 new habits you need to wait a minute. I know, identify your 3 bad habits that take you off course from your most important goal. Let's talk about that for a minute. Assuming you know your most important goal, what's a habit that takes you off course?
I can tell you one right.
Go ahead, David. Do what?
No, procrastination.
Yeah.
Cold call reluctance. Too much TV.
Yeah. Paul?
I had something now, I forgot it. I think my thing is, and I do this, and I used to, when I used to be a store manager at Walmart, I hated when my assistant managers did it, but I can fall into it too. And that is not completing one thing before I start the next thing, because I'll be in the middle of quoting somebody and then I'll have somebody else call me, and then somebody else call me, somebody else call me. Next thing you know, I got like 4 things in the middle that I'm working on at the same time, which drags out. And then I'm like, what? The first thing I'm working on, I'm like, man, I'm really don't even know where I'm at on it. Have I already quoted through all our carriers? Where am I at? Have I, have I printed the quote? Heck, I don't even know. So I think that's the number one thing I think I'd be to do to get better, is just to finish one thing. I mean, yeah, I got to answer the phone, but sometimes I'll end up starting to quote the next person when I shouldn't even really do that until I finish the first thing. The other thing I have a tendency to is I try to always tell people I'll have them quoted like as soon as possible, which some people don't care if it's as soon as possible. If the closing's not for like 6 weeks, they could care less. Of course, I'm trying to be, responsive, but I need to do a better job of really asking people what their expectations are. If they're not in a rush, then that's not as important. But a lot of people are in a rush. Sometimes people will call and say, like I had one last week, that I bought a house this morning. I needed insurance before the end of the day, because they have already closed and they paid cash and they just never got an insurance policy for it. So those are kind of the big things, I think.
Other people's called I've got a little pamphlet around here, some little booklet. It's the tyranny of the urgent.
Yeah.
And then I heard the perceived urgent.
Yeah.
They ask stuff that you want to provide it real quick, kind of like me when the phone rings. I want to answer the phone. I think I need to answer every phone call. And
except when I call.
What's that?
I said, except when I call. Right?
Except when you call. I did. I remember getting in my truck.
I'm just busted on you.
A couple of phone calls I was going to make from the truck, and one of them was you. And I'll have to figure out who the other one was, because there were a couple of people I needed to call last Friday. And then I got in my truck, my air conditioning was blowing hot air. Hadn't driven it in a couple of weeks since it got so hot. And and had to roll the window down and can't talk on a phone and with the window down. Herdy,
No.
how about you? What's a bad
Oh.
habit that takes you off course?
Patience. Patient. Oh, am I? Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, we're
Yeah.
we're,
Yeah,
I think we're
Yeah,
all fine with that. You couldn't hear me.
patience because I get so many. I'm like, in a way, it ties into what Paul said because I manage like about 250 YouTube channels and I manage like about 50 Google business pages, right? And it takes a lot of patience to go through step after step after step on these channels. So I get frustrated with them sometimes because I've given instructions out 30 times and then I have to go back and still fix a problem that should have been done by the client. But hey, part of it. But patience, my number one thing. I hadn't thought deep enough into the other two things, but I'm sure there's a couple.
Yep. Hey, Tom, we're talking about, we jumped to the end of the chapter with the summary action steps. And one of them is identify your 3 bad habits that take you off course from your most important goal. What's one of your bad habits besides Diana back there? What else is a bad habit?
Hey. Well, let's see. I have AT&T Wi-Fi,
I'm sorry.
and if I have AT&T Wi-Fi, and my dad were still alive, he would be sick to his stomach. The guy just came out here to hook up a house, turned off the whole freaking neighborhood. And that is the quality of people we got. I swear to God, I pay them because they take it out of my account. Anyway, I'll stop on that. You know, for me, you know, it's like the things that I don't have control of, and you can't make people do stuff they're not going to do. So, you know, if I can get someone to like start listening to that process early, that would be a good way for me to, you know, how do I deal with that behavior? I get frustrated. Like, you know, what you talk about, Danny, frustration means you're mad. But it is. It's like where you're, you know, they look to me for success, but it's kind of like when they don't help you and you're supposed to do it. Like, hey, Danny, get me a mortgage loan, but I don't want to give you numbers.
Yeah. I had a lady one time, did a loan application. The next day, I called her to ask her about uploading documents. And she said, we're not closing for a month. Why do you need these documents that so far ahead of time?
There you go.
But so think about your answers right there. And I mean, I look at my bad habits. You know, I have a bit of a deal with shiny objects and squirrels, you know, that I'm in the middle of something and I let like a phone call. I don't know if I'm fearful of missing a deal or just want to be available, but every time a phone calls, except when Paul Despain calls, I want to answer that phone. And Paul reminded me a while ago, Tom, that I didn't return his call Friday afternoon. When I said that a while ago. Anyway, I also get I'm trying right now to figure out when I need to be at my desk, doing follow-throughs, calling people that I've connected with, met out networking. I've got a pretty good sized database when I just need to be doing that versus going to meet new people. I went to bed last night thinking, I think tomorrow's just an at-desk day. I actually thought that starting off yesterday, and then realized, I got a 1 o'clock luncheon with somebody. Then I got asked to stop by the office, and got home at 4:45.
I mean, I just quickly say, I think if I were really ahead of this process, I'm going to review all my steps to manage client expectations, not manipulate, but to really manage and to let them know why certain actions help them versus, I'm in this fire drill mode because of what they do. Like you mentioned, why do you need the documents a month in advance? But if I can manage their expectations about why I need certain things, it's not just to help me, it's to help them. And maybe I don't do as good a job of describing that. I try to, but I think that if you get out ahead of that action steps, it's way before you need it.
Yeah.
Because my Achilles heel is patience. And finally, I just go, well, okay, boom, I hit the button. I send you a return later. They go, why'd you extend? Because I didn't have data. And I mean, like, why didn't you fund my loan, Danny? I didn't have data.
Yeah. Yep. What about you, Herdy? You were going to say something.
Well, what I was going to say was the key to that question is the word habit. These aren't things that are just tomorrow and Tuesday. They're every freaking day of our life, right? That are driving us absolutely crazy. So these are things we have to reverse. They're hard. When I say I don't have patience, I mean, that's going to take a little bit to unwind because every situation I'm put in with the kind of schedule I keep for my clients keeps my patience level really off. So how do I rework that?
Okay, so let's we'll jump number 3 for just a minute, but then I want to go back into the book. So the number 3 was this is summary action steps on page 90. Identify 3 new habits you need to develop to put yourself on track towards your most important goal. All right. Now, my most important goal, this 12-week period, this is week number 5. Most of you guys know, David heard me talk about it too, I think, that I work in these 12-week periods. Okay. And it helps me, during that period, I measure, evaluate, and correct how well did I, and what I'm measuring is tasks it takes to get to that goal. And then, how well did I obtain the task? And ideally, the way Moran and Lennington teach it in the 12-week goal book is that you outline, you lay out your task, and then how well did you, every day you grade yourself on each of those tasks. I've developed a point system. By the way, I'm teaching this right here, same time, same place, same link on Thursday if you want to sit in on it. But
Danny, what in your 12-week goals, what happens to the other 4 weeks? How do you use those?
Okay, the 4 weeks. So at the end of this 12 weeks, you take a week off. You still work, do whatever you need to do.
Right.
You're really evaluating and correcting. Okay. This 12 weeks, I'm going to ask you guys to maybe do some type of brainstorm with me about here's what I accomplished. I'm being more diligent than I've ever been tracking. Okay. And then just brainstorm. Okay, what do I need to do the next 12 weeks? And you start these anytime. My weeks start on Monday. Okay, and run through Sunday. That's the way I work. And so yeah. So number 3 is identify 3 new habits you need to develop to put yourself on track towards your most important goal. Okay, well, I look at it and, I'm fairly habitual in the mornings, of my mornings, but sometimes I've got a habit of getting too wrapped up in something and, not, this morning I've running late, been running 30 minutes late all day. Okay. Now I've made both of my appointments today, but I felt like I've been running behind. Now I've met 3 appointments. I had at 10 o'clock at the chamber in Cedar Park. I had a noon lunch, and then this 2 o'clock. I've met all of that. Some of my in between stuff. I give myself about 3 open hours between 8 and 6 to help David and Rich, our loan officers that need help. So I've been behind on some of that type stuff today, but I've also been I've had a habit of not getting up till 6 late. So I'm thinking right now that maybe my habit is I need to get back to 5 and just, crawl my lazy ass out of bed. So thinking about that and going back to the beginning, and some of these some of this stuff I've got marked, like Aristotle says, we are what we repeatedly do. Habit is defined by Webster's as an acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. So my workout routines, and that has become incredibly involuntary. And I've taught myself that I can develop something. I can develop a new habit, which is literally, if you studied any neuroplasticity, that's a new path in your brain. Ernie, you're walking. You're like that. If you don't get your walking in, it's a habit. You just need to go walking, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I think about that. David, you mentioned the call reluctance. The cold. I like what you said. Cold call reluctance. And
I don't blame you there.
Yeah, and I need to make 100 calls into my database. Not cold, not pure cold calls. Some of them have been so long since I called them, they are cold. Yeah.
So Danny calls those in the paragraph before the end chapter. He calls that you mentioned about the brain. It's developing new patterns and grooves. He describes those new habits as grooves. And here's the funny thing: he says, "Be patient with yourself as you're working through this." That's kind of a joke, but.
Yeah.
So I can give myself permission to not be patient, even on working on patience. Okay, that's great. Okay.
Well, hey, Tom, you said something about you said something about frustration and mad. Frustration leads to mad. Okay, but frustration comes from confusion. When you're in confusion, ask yourself when you're in frustration, ask yourself what you're confused about. And typically we're confused. You're like, I've got a loan deal right now that I'm frustrated about. And I'm confused. What's confusing about it is they've changed some underwriting guidelines on the loan. And I'm confused about what the underwriting guidelines are on. So now we're getting creative on how we're working up this guy's income. We're trying to come up with new ways to work up his income, finding more get creative about asking other questions. Realize that there's an issue with the property taxes. This was a $3.4 million deal, so there's a little bit of money there. So you back up, and then you become less frustrated, and for a while in a way. So as you work through stuff like that, but. Heard that on page 89, creating new habits and burning new grooves into your brain will take time. Be patient with yourself. If you fall off the wagon, brush yourself off and get back on. Yeah, I have a hard time not beating myself up. And so back to the beginning of the chapter and coming forward a little bit. Anybody got anything underlined or highlight? It says start by thinking your way out of the instant gratification trap.
Yeah, so that's the society we live in. So we're programmed for everything to be instantly at our fingertips. I was just thinking back on this a little bit, Danny, and I'm thinking that so much of this book deals with outward things we could work on that are seen, but I'm talking about things like patience, my perception of myself, my self-awareness, things that beat me up in my head, right? That stinking tape we played our whole lives, whatever that is, right? That gets triggered every once in a while. Those are the things that I struggle with to get toward my end results. It not necessarily being organized, not stuff in my job, but more stuff with all those influences. I don't know how to describe it. I just know that's the things that I know keep me held back, right? That I have to work on.
Okay, I mean, so we'll go back to the last chapter about choices. Now, is it right that if you make better choices, you need less patience?
Ozark or Yellowstone? I couldn't make up my mind. I tried.
What's that?
I said Ozark or Yellowstone. I don't know which one. I'm kidding.
No, I get that.
Being a film guy, you laugh, but being a
No,
videographer,
I'm laughing
being a
because I'm right there with you.
no, being a videographer, I like watching this stuff because I get ideas from watching. So part of that is what I have to do because it gives me ideas for new scenes or new ways to do stuff, or
How to launder money.
Yeah, how to launder money. How to all that stuff. Right.
Have you watched Boss Legacy yet, Herdy?
No, don't start.
It's
Don't
brand
even.
new. It's brand new.
Don't even let
Legacy.
Don't.
Brand new. We'll
Okay.
go on here on page
Great.
56. But I'll
Thank
drop
you.
that one and we'll move on. Most people drift through life without devoting. Think about this. I think about this and how I was until my, I've had periods, but anyway, most people drift through life without devoting much conscious energy to figuring out specifically what they want and what they need to do to take themselves there. I mean, I think I told a couple of you, David and Rich and I talked about it on Friday afternoon, but I know Herdy knows this, but I take time every morning, 15 to 30 minutes. Some days I'm wanting to be through in 5 to 7 minutes. Sometimes I'm realizing it's running 30 minutes. Normally I schedule 15. I'm going to take 15 minutes and I'm going to look at my schedule. There's a few things I do there, call it my dailies, but I'm going to look at my schedule for the day and I'm going to pray into that day. And part of that prayer is I'm going to think about every meeting that I have and how I want it to go. If somebody asked me, I started saying in about 1993, and for years, David Roy Whitlock there at the office, he started working with me back in the mid 90s, and he called me the other day and left a message. And when I called him back, he said, "You don't change your voicemail every day anymore." And I stopped that about 7 years ago, but I started in around 93 that every day I would change my voicemail. It's a great day, Danny Smith. It's a great day, Tuesday, May 17th. Please leave your name and number and I'll give you a call back. God bless. Every morning I change that. Now I did that as a suggestion from, it came out of something from Zig Ziglar because I regularly didn't call people back very often. Not on time. I delayed. So I started changing my voicemail every day because then they were going to know I checked my voicemail because I changed it. So that was kind of a self accountability thing that I went through. But this back to this statement, it says most people drift through life without devoting much conscious energy to figuring out specifically what they want and what they need to do to take themselves there. Now it falls into the that habits thing of then you identify 3 habits you need to develop, put yourself on track towards your most important goal. Now, one habit I need to do, and I'm making a note right now. I need to rework on my time block. we have a thing on our team, 10, 2, and 4. 10, 2, and 4 is that you make your 10 cold calls a day at 10 o'clock in the morning. You don't finish them at 2, you call it at 10, and you finish them at 2. You don't finish them at 2, you stop everything and finish them at 4. I can ignore those reminders pop on my calendar as well as I ignore anything.
So Danny, if you reverse processed the thought process example, instead of thinking I have to make 50 calls today, what if the first thing you thought of on your habit was how's my end result going to look? And if you focused on that, wouldn't it seems like it'd be easier to make the calls instead of thinking, God, I got to make these calls. I'm going to think about what the end result's going to be, which would make the calls easier. I'm thinking my goal may not be the actual end of what I'm trying to accomplish, but patience could give me some other things that I didn't think of as a goal. So the goal may not be anything to do with the task.
What
That's
book are
deep.
you reading?
I'm not. I'm just talking off the top of my head.
Well, Hurdy, I like that. I've been doing some reading, studying about first principles thinking. So people use that, or people like Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, Elon Musk, Aristotle. That's just a pretty good list. And they're like, let's flip the script, attack our assumptions, and then look at the principles underneath that and come up with a completely different way of doing it. Now, I mean, Hurdy, that leading, I mean, some of my desks like something I want to think about, not just think about the process, because it really, I mean, it's like you're attacking the old way of doing things. And if you look at a Tesla, if he hadn't done that, there wouldn't be a Tesla automobile. Let's cut the chase. So you think about that and go, I want to really rethink my business from that standpoint, because everyone is in this same kind of business mindset in public accounting, and it is broken. It's not working. I mean, the stress level, people are quitting. They can't. I mean, it's crazy. So I need a new approach. So it's like, I like the fact you're kind of questioning the underlying assumptions, because when you do, like, I'm making 50 calls for, somebody came up with a reason to do that. And if it's effective, Danny, if your team, I'm all over that, but maybe there's a way to make the right 5 calls. I'm just making it up as we go through, okay? Instead of 50, I don't know. But that just reading a couple of different articles about this first principles thinking, I'm like, wow, this is deep. Not easy to do, but it's deep.
My whole marketing is reverse engineering, because everybody I bump into has already been doing marketing, and then they have to reverse their whole thinking of what they're trying to accomplish. So I'm used to doing that. When my dad was building the guidance systems for all the Apollo spacecraft in Huntsville, I remember him coming home all the time talking about reverse engineering, that to solve a problem, they had to first think what they were trying to accomplish with what they were trying to solve. I think that kind of got built into me as a kid, right? So that's the reason I bring that up, is I wonder if it's easier to attain a goal if we're thinking about the end result as opposed to the habit of just doing it. That was my point.
Okay, well, let's move on into page 57. Finding your mojo. Assuming willpower, and this is good, assuming willpower is what you need to change your habits is akin, and he's saying you need to assume it. It's akin to trying to keep a hungry grizzly bear out of your picnic basket by covering it with a napkin. To fight the bear of bad habits, you need something stronger. When you're having trouble doing the hard work of achieving your goals, it's common to believe you simply lack willpower. I disagree. It's not enough to choose to be successful. What's going to keep you consistent with the new positive choices you need to make? What's going to stop you from falling back? What's going to be different this time? As soon as you get the slightest bit uncomfortable, you're going to be tempted to slide back into your old comfortable routine. Kind of like me, Tom, last few years, W-2 employee, especially since 18, Tax Reform Act and all of that, my W-2 wage is pretty simple, just to do no Schedule C and just do a TurboTax. But I will tell you right now, for as long as I can remember, when it came time, whether it was to get my stuff to an accountant or do my taxes. Guess what got done? I cleaned my garage. Stuff I never do. My wife will tell you. I start cleaning something. I start doing stuff I don't want to do because I don't want to do my taxes.
Because it's that much better than doing your taxes.
Yeah.
Dang,
Yeah.
Danny, that means I got a career.
Yeah, exactly. I
Love
start
it,
saying,
man.
well, go sound like job security.
It's just like how I love insurance. Just kidding. I did a lot of insurance audits early, and when you talk to clients about insurance, this big iron door drops. I'm not even selling like, hey, you're self-insured. They go, no, I'm not. I mean, Paul, you know the deal. So I mean, thanks for sharing that, Danny. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. So, so just think about what he's saying here on 58. You've tried willpower, it's failed you. You've set
Well enough.
resolutions, you let them go. You thought you were going to lose all that weight last time. You thought you were going to make all the sales calls last year. He says, let's stop the insanity and do something different. Forget about willpower. It's time for why power. What's interesting, he wrote this before Simon Sinek's book, Find Your Why, or whatever it was. He says, time for what your choices are the only, your choices, go back to chapter 2. Your choices are only meaningful when you connect them to your desires and dreams. The wisest and most motivating choices feeds into what you were saying, Herdy, and you haven't even read the chapter. The wisest and most motivating choices are the ones aligned with that which you identify as your purpose, your core self, and your highest value. You've got to want something, know why you want it, and you'll end up giving too easy. So what is your why? You've got to have a reason if you're going to make significant improvements in your life and to make you want to make the necessary changes. Your why must be something that is fantastically motivating to you. You've got to want to get up and go for years.
So Danny, having a why as opposed to trying to manage your willpower makes total sense. Think about that. When we try to manage and control ourselves, that's really difficult. But if we give ourselves a why, right? It just hit me that the why becomes the end result, and you can make mistakes and not necessarily manage every piece of it, right?
Right.
So, it's the same thing we talked about when we talked about our Christian walk, right? Trying to manage your sin as opposed to just realizing you're forgiven and work through it, right?
Yeah. And then change yourself from the inside out. I'm going to put something up here. You made me think about something. This is making me think about something. Let me see if I can get to the beginning of it. I'm going to show y'all something. I listened to this book last week, and I started listening to it again this morning. And there we go. Can y'all see it?
Yep. Dream big.
Bob Goff, Dream Big. He wrote a book a few years ago. His original book was called Love Does. Guy's an attorney turned philanthropist, works with children in hospitals or schools in third world countries, done a bunch of other stuff. Incredible. And he reads the book, and he's really, really funny. And it's a great great book to listen to. So he goes on here, and he talks about some of this. And if you heard, you made me think about that book, and then realizing, there's a lot of that right here in this book. Core motivation over on page 61. The access point to your why power is through your core values, which define both who you are and what you stand for. I know Herdy's been through it. I don't know if anybody else on the screen here, but the speed of trust and the 5 cores of credibility. And the second core of credibility is intent. Well, intent is lived out in our behavior, and it's driven by our agenda that's driven by our motivation that's fed out of our values. Getting your core values defined and properly calibrated is one of the most important steps in redirecting your life toward your grandest vision. If you haven't clearly defined your values, you may find yourself making choices that conflict with what you want. Now, I call that a gap. You say, here are my values. You list your values out, and then you journal, make notes in your calendar of things that you're doing, compare that to your values, determine the gaps that need to be closed. And he has a resource there, on page 62, thecompoundeffect.com/resources. There's a couple of online, if you need links, let me know. I can send you links to some online stuff also to help you with your value. I was going to go into it, but then he says, find your fights. Any comments or about the values thing?
I mean, I think it's essential. It's my first step to qualify a client is, do we have shared values?
Yeah.
And if we don't, my deal is like, it's been nice to meet you, and the meeting's over. Now, I can't change their values at that point. I want to associate myself with people who want my services, but share my values. It saved me a lot of time, a lot of effort, and hopefully made better decisions.
Well, I'm sure it's also saved you a whole lot of heartache. And but making that choice up front is keeping you from a lot of frustration.
Well, I won't name it, but there's an industry right now. We've got some clients in, and because of how that industry works, I'm wondering if I should have if I should even have clients in the industry. It is that.
If you should have clients where?
In that industry at all. This industry, I just see a pattern of bad behavior. Even
Sounds like
people
realtors. I'm just guessing, but I won't say.
No, it's not. It's not. And it's like completely disconnected companies, but in that the overlap is that industry, and I don't want to be the enabler. It's like handing a beer to a drunk. I don't want to be that person. The behavior inside the industry is so bad. Even though what they tell you, they're having to deal with the compete, having to be their competitor. I got some, if I do this, I've got some who got fired. Like, I can't do your work anymore. I got to pray about it, because I can't change the industry. And they're kind of, they're in it. They're in the midst of it. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. And Tom, I would say that for me, when my behavior isn't congruent, doesn't match up with my values, it drives you crazy. Yeah. And that leads to the stuff where it either gets your attention and you improve it, or you go down the tubes even further, right? Because that's what leads to depression and some other things, anxiety. So, you got to look at that congruency of that behavior, which for me, that's my big red flag. When I start feeling like I'm out of whack with myself, I know something's going on that I'm not addressing. So
let me share this with you guys, Tom.
Good point. Good point, Tom.
Yep. Tom, you'll recognize this, guys. Wasn't planning on doing this, but here, Tom, this is out of John Maxwell's Leadership Commentary Bible.
Oh yeah.
This is out of the Sermon on the Mount, and those are my values right there. And then here's what he says about each of those values, and this is why he's got it in there. And anybody let me know. I'll be glad to share it.
Yeah, send it to us.
Yeah.
Please send that.
This part here, part of it in here, some of the italics is not on there. I'll separate it so you can understand. Look at the verses versus the. Oh, you know what? This is not the one with his commentary with it.
Okay.
I'll find the one with commentary and send it to you guys. And,
Yeah, share that, Dan. I think most of you, if you let me know that when I did my MBA later in life, I did it through Indiana Wesleyan. That Wesleyan school required reading every course was Maxwell's Leadership Bible. And it wasn't just sitting on the shelf. We used it, and that was God's blessing because it kept you on track with your work. And I mean, I don't care if it was a math course. You had Maxwell's Leadership Bible, so it was really good for me. Really good.
Yeah, it's been a big game changer for me the last 20 years. And so, you know, love this right here. I'm reminded of John Eldridge talks about in the Wild at Heart. There's 3 things every man needs, and one is has to do with this here: find your fight. And people are either motivated by something they want or something they don't want. Love is a powerfully motivating force, so is hate. Contrary to social correctness, it can be good to hate disease, hate injustice, hate ignorance, hate complacency, and so on. Sometimes identifying an enemy lights your fire. Some of my greatest motivation, determination, and dogged persistence came when I had an enemy to fight. And you know, all this is pretty powerful.
Oh yeah.
He ends this part on page 24, this subchapter. We can all make powerful choices. We can all take back control by not blaming chance, fate, or anyone else for our outcomes. It's within our ability to create change rather than letting past hurtful experiences sap our energy and sabotage our success. We can use them to fuel positive, constructive change. So here he goes talking about goals and ends this subchapter here with another life assessment worksheet. So really highly recommend it, you know, pulling those. I've got them, guys. I've got to give an idea on Darren Hardy, that book right there. You saw that, Hardy? Yep, that book there. That one there. And this kind of an interesting class. That one there. This is 3 separate Darren Hardy classes that I've taken, and or one of them 5 months into start. You know, I started it in January after reading or listening to this book last year. And nothing new, but I don't know if I've heard anything new, but the way he puts it together, I really, really like. Other than he uses terms like our friend Scott Carley. Scott uses all these big buzzwords, superpower and stuff like this. Darren Hardy does a lot of that too. One of those is called Insane Productivity. Another program is called Ludicrous, and the third one's called Hero's Journey. And so I've had to get. I'm not big on those type of buzzwords, so I know you are, Tom. But so goals, as I mentioned before, on page I'm on 65. The compound effect is always working. It will always take you somewhere. Question is where. I love that right there. You're going somewhere where you just got to figure out, is it where you want to be going?
Mm-hmm.
You can harness this relentless force and have it carry you to new heights, but you must know where you want to go. What goals, dreams, and destinations do you desire? Paul J. Meyer, I met Paul a couple of times. He's from Waco. Donnie Hunter, a couple of you know Donnie. I heard you know Donnie real well. Donnie worked for Paul Meyer for years. He said, if you are not making the progress that you would like to make and are capable of making it, it's simply because your goals are not clearly defined. One of Paul's most memorable quotes remind us of the importance of goals. Whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe, and enthusiastically act upon must come to pass. Or that's the enthusiastically act upon. David, you're not doing anything enthusiastic about those cold calls. The one skill most responsible for the abundance in my life is learning how to effectively set and achieve goals. There's a difference. I'm gonna go off script here, but I know Herdy, maybe Paul, I don't know, but you know, I haven't taught the class in 3 or 4 years, but there's a difference between goal setting and goal achievement. It's a different part of our brain that we achieve goals with than what we set goals with. Say that again. We set goals with one part of our brain, we achieve goals with a separate part of our brain. And what's in between it, there might be a little dramatic in this, but it's a way to understand it. What's in between there is called a terror barrier. Okay, because our comfort zone doesn't want us to change. The comfort zone located, you know, it's part of our subconscious mind. And part of a big purpose of our subconscious is to maintain reality. And I set a goal for, I'm gonna make 50 calls this week. I hadn't made 50 calls in a long time. That's not the reality of my subconscious mind. I'm going to come up with, my garage might get cleaned this week. Okay. All right. I might file this year's taxes and they're not due yet. Okay. I'm going to do things I might not want to. I might clean out the inside of my old truck. Okay. That needs to be cleaned out. I'll come up with things to do to keep me from doing something like make those cold calls because of that terror barrier that's there. And that has to do with achieving that goal. So anyway,
reminds me of that old book, you know, Eat the Frog. Just
Yep.
get it over with, because if not, it drags on and on and on. And then we get into procrastination,
Yeah.
which I know David mentioned, and well, everybody can fall into that too. So,
yep.
I mean, Paul, I totally believe in that. But
Oh, me too.
I mean, it works for me because it just like suddenly your counter looks like a breeze. I mean, you know, I'm not going to wait to give someone bad news. They need to know and need to help them. And it's
I
easy
agree.
to put it off. Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So he goes over here on page 66, how goal setting really works. The mystery secret is revealed. He says, you only see, experience, and get what you look for. If you don't know what you're looking for, you certainly don't get it. By our very nature, we are goal-seeking creatures. Our brain is always trying to align our outer world with what we're seeing and expecting our inner world. So when you instruct your brain to look for things you want, you will begin to see them. In fact, the object of your desire has always existed around you, but your mind and eyes weren't open to see it. Talks about our sensory, all the billions of sensory bytes of information that we get every day. When you define your goals, you give your brain something new to look for and focus on. With this new perspective, your mind proceeds to match up I'm in the middle of page 67. Your mind proceeds to match up on the outside with what you want most on the inside.
So So Danny, a wise old Methodist preacher one time told me straight to my face when I was teaching recovery classes and getting frustrated, said, life's a struggle. Life's not fair. If you can find a place in between those two things, you'll be a good guy. He said that life's a struggle, and the Christian life and life's a struggle, and that life's not fair. If you can learn to live in between those two things, you'll be a good fellow.
That's a little bit better, probably what I learned in the Navy. Life's a bitch and you die.
That's the book summary.
But
Yeah,
there's paying taxes somewhere in there too, though.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm paying
but
taxes,
see,
yeah.
that's
There was,
that-
I thought, yeah.
I think that's the whole point, right? Is that I tend to go the opposite direction from you on some things. I think that sometimes we take life way too seriously and we try too hard to accomplish things when in fact we should enjoy life and have things, but not to overwhelm ourselves with, I got to do this, I got to do that. Relax within the struggle. I learned at the baseball plate. You can't hit a pitch unless you're relaxed at the plate. I don't care who you are. You can't hit a curveball, slider, or fastball if you're standing up there gripping the bat like you're going to break it in half and trying to think too hard. You just got to stand up there and see what's coming and make a decision really quickly. So I hate to say that, but I don't take the goal setting near as seriously as half the people in the world. I sometimes don't even set them. I just go, you know what? I'm going to let bygones be bygones this year, and I'm just going to figure out what I want to do and have some fun with it. And then I'll kind of get moving forward with it. So I hope that doesn't go off the charts but sometimes it's just the way it is.
Well, I mean, we talked about it and talked about many times that, and John Maxwell says that if he has to pick growth or goals, he's going to pick growth every time.
Right.
And the guys,
I disagree.
And part of that is you know, in one sense, Herdy, you're picking a goal and you're doing your goal. Okay. And so let's do this. Let's all catch up on the chapter this week. Let's pick up next week with behave yourself, starting on page 70. And there he gives a formula, which to Herdy's point, that you make choices plus your behavior plus your habit, then it's all compounded through time and you equal your goal. So he says this is the doing process, or in some cases the stop doing process. What stands between you and your goal is your behavior. Do you need to stop doing anything so the compound effect isn't taking you into a downward spiral? So we'll pick up next week on page 70. Any parting comments?